First-person shooters continue to be one of the most popular genres in gaming, and there's a consistent influx of new titles that make keeping up with every release an impossible task. To that end, here are 15 of the best first-person shooters that you probably didn't play but definitely should. SPLITGATE. SPLITGATE combines the high-octane first-person shooting of contemporaries like Halo with some ingenious portal mechanics that come together to create a markedly fresh experience. It's a lot of fun to move around portals while spraying bullets at your opponents, and the map design provides many options for coming up with your own creative strategies. While SPLITGATE's player count has dropped by quite a margin in recent times, it remains an enjoyable time nevertheless. Rust. Rust is all about trying to survive against all odds in procedurally generated maps with little in the name of available resources. You have to collect resources and eventually grow stronger by gathering weapons and crafting gear, which opens up new possibilities to mount an attack on those who stand in your way. Rust's mechanics don't differ much from a standard survival game, but the custom game modes and procedural map generation make it much more fun than its peers. Half-Life ALYX arguably offers the best Half-Life experience to date, and it's a bit of a shame that it's only limited to VR headsets. Given that it's restricted to just VR, a lot of people most likely never got to experience it. As expected, some mods were released that enable the game to be played without VR, but it's never going to be the same as a potential native non-VR experience. TREPANG 2. If you're a fan of fast-paced first-person shooters, you can't really go wrong with TREPANG 2. The story might not be the strongest, but the game more than makes up for it with some spectacular gunplay. You can dual-wield weapons, slow down time, and cloak for temporary invisibility, which come together to give a distinct power fantasy of being a force to be reckoned with. It's a thunderous throwback to classics like Max Payne, which make it a must-play for fans of these games. System Shock Remake. Night Dive Studios had been working on a full-fledged remake of System Shock for quite some time, and the game was finally released earlier this year. And we're happy to report that this remake is a great translation of the classic, complete with a graphics overhaul and reworked mechanics to placate a modern audience. The story of Rogue AI Shodan remains as riveting as ever, and so is the highly dynamic combat loop that drives the core gameplay forward. Resistance 3. Resistance 3 is one of the most underrated games on the PS3, which makes it the perfect candidate for such a list. The final installment of the Resistance trilogy makes some big changes to the franchise formula, including, but not limited to, swapping out the military setting for a post-apocalyptic one, complete with new weapons and set pieces to support this updated setting. The multiplayer was also equally spectacular, with a variety of game modes ranging from Team Deathmatch to CTF and Breach. It's a solid game that deserves a ton of love, and fans who overlooked it upon launch should definitely give this a go. Wretched. Set against the backdrop of Planet Titan, developer From Beneath Software's Wretched tells the story of a space engineer trying to leave an enemy-infested alien planet. The story seems to be drawing influences from Dead Space, but the gameplay is a lot more fast-paced, with aggressive enemies that can make short work of you if you aren't careful. In addition to this, the level design is also non-linear, so you could venture off the critical path to find a few extra resources or gear upgrades to help you in this journey. While Wretched doesn't have anything exceptional going for it, it's still a solid game that's worth a try. Back 4 Blood. Back 4 Blood was meant as a spiritual successor to Valve's Left 4 Dead, and while it might not have quite hit the mark, it did come surprisingly close to nailing the feel of its inspirations. Turtle Rock Studios has created an appropriately chaotic zombie shooter, with best-in-class shooting mechanics and solid level designs to boot. It's extremely fun to mow down hordes of zombies with friends. And the game's card system adds just that element of randomness that makes each run different from the last. SCORN. Ebb Software's SCORN is an interesting first-person shooter that has the capability to induce feelings of disgust and unease like no other. Everything from the player character to the weapons to the environments is created out of living organs and bones, which looks absolutely gruesome in all the right ways for a horror game. It's a slow game with a lot of exploration and puzzles, and combat is sprinkled between those sections where you have to use your bloody arsenal to fight all sorts of demonic abominations. SCORN might not be everyone's cup of tea, but horror game fans ought to give it a try. SCP Secret Laboratory. SCP Secret Laboratory is an asymmetrical multiplayer horror game where players have to fight against each other in a race to escape a secret laboratory. You can take control of different agents that have different abilities and use your skills in tandem with environmental threats to make it out alive. It's free to play and definitely worth a shot if you have a group of friends to play with. GTFO. GTFO's brand of methodical gameplay might not appeal to everyone, but those who jive with it are likely to spend dozens upon dozens of hours venturing through the game's darkest depths and tackling its toughest challenges. Players drop in groups of 4, and you must use stealth and coordination to navigate through its labyrinthian levels. Enemies can quickly overwhelm the team with ridiculous numbers, which adds an element of brutality to each new run.
It's just part of me, who I am. I don't fight it.
Turbo Overkill. Boomer shooters have been becoming a lot more popular lately, and Apogee Entertainment's Turbo Overkill stands tall as one of the best games in this growing niche. The game takes place in a cyberpunk world that's crawling with all sorts of demonic abominations, and you must traverse through these levels and neutralize enemies' presence with nothing but sheer brute force. In addition to your standard issue machine guns and rocket launchers, Turbo Overkill also features special powers like wall running, grappling hooks, and of course a deadly chainsaw attached to your leg. The retro aesthetics have a distinct charm of their own, which is icing on the top of a very lovely cake. BONEWORKS. BONEWORKS is a high-octane VR adventure that puts you in the shoes of a soldier as he navigates his way through a science facility while solving puzzles and taking part in gunfights. As you can imagine, the game is heavily inspired by Half-Life, but it makes good use of VR's capabilities to deliver a highly interactive experience that constantly adds new weapons and tools to the mix, which keep things from getting stale. DEADLINK. DEADLINK can be best described as a mixture of cyberpunk's neon-heavy aesthetics and modern action shooters' dynamic combat, and there's perhaps nothing like it. The levels take place in sprawling arenas that are filled with enemies, and you must make good use of your weapons and movement abilities to defeat the opposition with absolute style. DEADLINK also features roguelite elements, such as combat modifiers, which make each run markedly different than the last. Add to that some memorable boss fights and a head-banging soundtrack, and DEADLINK becomes unmissable for fans of cyberpunk-style shooters. Wolfenstein: The Old Blood. Wolfenstein: The Old Blood is a standalone prequel to Wolfenstein: The New Order. Released in 2015, this entry in the modern Wolfenstein saga remains criminally underappreciated to this day, which is a shame because it features the signature brand of spectacle-heavy firefights and surprisingly effective storytelling as its bigger brothers. With new weapons to wield and enemy types to fight, there are plenty of reasons for Wolfenstein fans to jump back into this one hell of a standalone expansion. And with that, we reached the end of the video. Have anything to say? Let us know in the comments below. Also, we upload new videos every single day on GamingBolt, so please consider subscribing as it really helps us out. Thanks for watching.